Focus of all those documentaries and Hollywood movies. But there's one version of Titanic we have never seen until this morning.
For the first time, we have an exact digital copy of the real thing.
For more than a century, the Titanic's story felt complete. A disaster locked in time, repeated in films, preserved behind glass, and passed down as legend. But deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, nearly 4,000 meters below the surface, where darkness is absolute and pressure is unforgiving, that story has been quietly rewritten. Using cutting-edge three-dimensional scanning technology, scientists have built the most detailed digital replica of the Titanic ever created. And what they discovered down there doesn't just add new details, it challenges long-accepted theories, exposes unseen damage, and reveals secrets hidden since 1912. If you believe the Titanic has already given up all its mysteries, this discovery proves it hasn't. Subscribe for more hidden history. Brought Titanic's ghosts back to life. For decades, the Titanic's story seemed complete. From documentaries to museum tours, every detail was pored over. At least so we thought. All the while, the real evidence sat in darkness nearly 4,000 meters below, unseen, untouchable, and out of reach for even the bravest explorers. In 2025, that all changed. Not because someone dived deeper, but because someone finally saw the wreck with new eyes, a digital eye set powered by photogrammetry and relentless curiosity. The mission began as a partnership between deep-sea engineering firms, National Geographic, and Atlantic Productions. Their goal was audacious: map the entire wreck, every rivet and shadow. Not just for show, but to answer the mysteries that generations of divers and dreamers had only guessed at. They deployed a small fleet of robotic submersibles, each loaded with multispectral cameras, lasers, and 3D mapping software. The submersibles crisscrossed the site in a methodical grid for weeks, taking over 700,000 photos from every possible angle and collecting 16 terabytes of visual data. This was not just a scan. It was, in the words of one engineer, a resurrection, a way to time travel back to the very night the Titanic vanished. As the first renderings came to light, even the most hardened experts were stunned. The bow, still stately and upright, pointed toward New York it never reached. Railings bent, portholes gaping, and anchor chains coiled as if waiting for orders. But travel just 600 meters, and you meet the stern, a mangled skeleton, collapsed decks, boilers, and engines torn out and flung across the ocean floor. Between the two, a narrow corridor of 5,000 artifacts formed an unmistakable debris trail, like breadcrumbs marking Titanic's final agony. What makes this so powerful? For the first time, you can zoom in on a rivet, see a child's shoe, or read the faded logo on a tea set. More than that, you can trace exactly where each piece landed, giving experts a forensic timeline of the disaster in ways never before possible. The digital model, so precise that you can count the teeth on a gear or spot a scorch mark on wiring, instantly debunked some of the old myths. One of the biggest revelations, the ship's breakup, was not the dramatic one-second snap shown in movies. The scan shows a brutal, drawn-out sequence, steel beams twisting, decks folding in on themselves, machinery hurled hundreds of meters as the stern rotated violently during descent. The bow, by contrast, buried itself gracefully in the mud, as if still reaching for the surface. This explained why the two halves look so different, and why personal belongings from the grandest staterooms ended up in the same resting place as a coal trimmer's shovel. With every pass made by the submersibles, fresh details slowly came into view. Hidden rooms appeared that no camera had ever captured before, along with corridors where melted wiring still hung stubbornly from the walls, and crushed bunks where luggage lay tangled in thick webs of debris. The remarkable accuracy of this technology allowed researchers to piece together where crew members and passengers once stood, what they desperately held on to in their final moments, and how rapidly the chaos spread throughout the ship. Yet, as astonishing as these visual discoveries may be, they opened the door to even larger questions. If the outside of the Titanic revealed a new story, what might a deeper look inside, especially within the engine rooms and electrical systems, uncover about the ship's final struggle? Was the tale of heroism and tragedy far more complex than we ever imagined? With one last sweeping pass of the submersibles, attention shifted away from the haunting corridors to the true battleground of Titanic's final hours. The engine room and the courageous crew who fought to keep hope alive long after others had lost it. If the surface revelations were shocking, what the digital scan exposed deep below the decks was even more powerful. Just when researchers believed they had uncovered everything, discoveries from the engine rooms revealed what truly shaped the fate of everyone on board. And at last, the evidence has come to light. Titanic's final battle below deck. In nearly every telling of the Titanic's heartbreaking story, attention has always stayed above the decks. We imagine terrified passengers racing toward lifeboats, the band playing bravely as the icy Atlantic slowly takes the ship, and officers struggling to keep order while panic spreads in every direction. But what truly happened far below, deep inside the ship, where the Titanic's heart beat through fire, steam, and steel? For decades, that part of the story lived mostly in guesswork and brief mentions. Now, thanks to revolutionary three-dimensional scanning technology, those dark corners have been illuminated, revealing a story of strength and sacrifice that is almost impossible to comprehend. The Titanic was far more than a luxury liner. It was a massive floating power station driven by 29 boilers, more than 150 roaring furnaces, and some of the largest reciprocating steam engines ever constructed at the time. The engineering sections were vast, maze-like, and dangerous even under normal conditions, let alone while seawater poured violently through the damaged hull. For the stokers, trimmers, and engineers working below deck, daily life was already grueling and unforgiving. They endured exhausting 12-hour shifts surrounded by blistering heat and deafening noise that shook their bodies to the core. And yet, in those final hours, they were forced to confront a situation that no amount of training could have prepared them for. The new scan, built from more than 700,000 high-resolution images, brought the lower decks into view with a level of closeness that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. Forensic investigators discovered that the metal grates in boiler room number 2 had buckled inward, clear proof that heat and pressure remained dangerously high even as water flooded the space. According to experts, this could only mean one thing. The men on duty continued feeding the fires and managing the boilers long after many others had escaped to higher decks. These men were the guardians of Titanic's lifeblood, and by refusing to leave their posts, they gave hundreds of people above them precious time and a real chance to survive. Consider what that meant in real, human terms. Every extra minute, the lights stayed glowing. Every moment, the pumps fought back against the freezing Atlantic water, allowed another lifeboat to be lowered. Another child could be passed into safety. Another group of frightened passengers could navigate the confusing corridors toward hope. Without these men, whose names have only partly been recovered through crew lists and survivor accounts, the fragile order on Titanic's decks would have unraveled into sheer panic. One survivor, Lawrence Beasley, later reflected, "The lights, Steady and reassuring, gave us courage. Only later did I realize that someone had to pay for that calm with their lives. What the scan revealed paints an almost cinematic picture of the ship's final hour. In the twisted wreckage of the stern, researchers uncovered something no earlier expedition had ever noticed. A manual steam valve locked firmly in the open position, hidden among crushed walkways and tangled pipes. In maritime engineering, that valve was critical, supplying steam from the boilers to the ship's dynamos, which powered the electrical system. Time and again, survivors recalled electric lights glowing against the surrounding darkness, flickering but stubbornly staying on until the very end. For years, skeptics dismissed these memories as exaggeration shaped by trauma. Now, metallurgical analysis confirms they were telling the truth. The men in the engine rooms made a deliberate decision to keep the generators running as long as they could, sacrificing themselves not for glory, but to buy time for people they would never meet. Forensic electrical engineers studying the three-dimensional model uncovered another chilling detail: scorched wiring and corroded junction boxes near the forward power station. Unlike random damage, these burn patterns showed clear signs of overload. The engineers had intentionally rerouted electricity through backup circuits, pushing the ship's power system to its limits. Some wires were fused together by intense heat, proof that someone stayed behind, possibly with freezing water rising around their legs, to carefully manage the fragile balance of power and light. Had those men abandoned their posts even 15 minutes sooner, Titanic's decks would have been swallowed by total darkness, turning an already desperate situation into uncontrollable chaos. This quiet, painstaking heroism stands in stark contrast to the chaos and panic above. Historians revisiting the official British and American inquiries have uncovered survivor accounts that now make far more sense. Women and children rushing toward lifeboats remembered the ship feeling strangely alive, even as it sank. For years, many assumed that was just the haze of terror. Today, however, it is clear that the last sense of order, the final calm, was bought by the engineers, firemen, and trimmers who remained below, fully aware there was no escape. Their names rarely made headlines, their stories buried beneath tales of millionaires and aristocrats. The 2025 digital scan, however, is finally rewriting that narrative. Delving deeper into the lower decks, investigators were able to reconstruct the timeline. The iceberg's strike had breached 6 watertight compartments, a fatal blow that doomed the Titanic. Yet, with each passing minute, the men below fought against the inevitable. Boiler rooms were soon awash with incoming water. In stifling heat and steam, they shoveled coal, managed pressure, and ran pumps, even as icy water gnawed at their ankles. The manual override on the steam valve was no accident. It was a deliberate, calculated act, perhaps carried out by the chief engineer or a trusted assistant, knowingly sealing their own fates for the slim chance of saving those above. Accounts from surviving crew members bring the scene to life. Trimmer Walter Hurst, one of the few engine men to survive, recalled the chaos of those final moments. Water was coming in fast, the sound was like thunder, and all around, men were shouting, trying to be heard over the roar. But the engineers, they were calm. They just kept working. I don't know how they did it, but the lights stayed on. It was like they were fighting the night itself. Hurst's words align perfectly with the new evidence. The professionalism and sacrifice of the engineering crew made the difference between life and death for hundreds on deck. The emotional weight of these discoveries is immense. For more than a century, the Titanic's story centered on loss and unanswered questions. Why were lifeboats insufficient? Why did the ship sail so fast? Why did rescue come too late? The digital scan offers a different answer. Who stood their ground when hope was gone? Who turned a technical disaster into an act of profound humanity? The images of warped grates, scorched wires, and a single open valve tell a story no words could fully capture. In the frozen steel of Titanic's resting place, the unsung heroes finally receive the recognition they deserve. Maritime safety expert Dr. Elaine Barnes, a consultant interpreting the scan, summarized it best. Titanic's true legacy is not only in how she was lost, but in the men who bought time with their lives. It is not enough to say they were brave. They were the line between survival and oblivion. The evidence supports her conclusion. 30 or more men stayed below, battling a losing fight against the sea. By delaying the inevitable, they changed the outcome for hundreds of souls above. But this groundbreaking technology has done more than honor the forgotten heroes. It has revealed just how narrowly Titanic avoided an even greater catastrophe. Engineers have calculated that if the generators had failed even 10 minutes sooner, the deck above would have descended into complete chaos. No lights for evacuation, no power for the pumps, no chance for officers to maintain order. Survival depended on minuscule details, millimeters of steel, the precise position of a valve, the final flicker of electricity. Tiny variables, each holding the balance between life and death. This discovery sheds new light on the aftermath, when Titanic's bow finally slipped beneath the waves. The stern towered above, glowing until nearly the very end. Witnesses in lifeboats described a surreal golden light spilling from the windows, a beacon of eerie calm against the dark sea. For decades, that image hovered between myth and memory. Now, it is verified truth. The engine crew's last stand is etched into the wreck itself, preserved not only in legend, but in metal, wire, and riveted steel. As researchers traced the forensic clues through twisted corridors and scorched panels, they realized that Titanic's true story was not about failure. It was about endurance. The scan provides a new lens for understanding those final hours, a chronicle of deliberate choices, unyielding sacrifice, and extraordinary courage. If there were ever doubt that heroism could exist in absolute darkness, Titanic's unsung engineers have proven it, written in iron, rivets, and molten steel. Yet even as the world absorbs these revelations, the scan points toward new mysteries. With all this skill and courage, why did the ship still fail so completely? How did design and construction contribute to the disaster? Was Titanic undone by fate or by flaws hidden until the very end? The next chapter moves from the human story to the mechanical, a forensic autopsy of the ship itself. Scientists now use the scan to simulate the breakup, analyzing the tiniest margins that separated survival from disaster. The story grows more astonishing with every revelation. As the lights flickered and the final pumps gasped their last, did Titanic's very structure seal her fate before she ever left the dock? The answer lies in the twisted metal and shattered decks, where human resolve, engineering, and inexorable fate collided in the coldest hours of history. What unfolded next would not only shock survivors, but challenge the world to rethink everything it thought it knew about the greatest shipwreck of all time. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Your support means a lot